Hello everyone. Can we just do a quick sound check? Can you hear my voice clearly? Fantastic. Thank you guys. Okay, so just a quick intro before we get started with today's webinar. So, my name is Thomas, and I've been teaching English for the last 5 years, and I've been recently, for the last few years, teaching Ielts specifically to university students and adults. I thought that this was the best way to help students achieve their goals and targets. So, I chose to specify in that field. Well, a bit about me. I'm originally from Australia and I'm based here in Vietnam. I'm currently living in Ho Chi Minh City in the south of Vietnam. So what about you guys? Where are you from?
Click này bị gì ta? Alo.
Oh, hi there, from Pakistan. I noticed that Pakistan unfortunately lost the cricket final. Sorry to mention that to you again. Actually, I wanted you guys to win against England. Too bad about that. Hello from Nigeria.
Em nói là em đang live stream, anh có nghe không? Anh nhắn tin đi, đừng có nói nữa. Làm sao em nghe bài được?
Morocco. Indonesia. Wow, it looks like a lot of participants from my corner of the world. Is anyone based in the UK right now?
Im đi, anh nhắn tin đi, đừng có nói chuyện nữa.
Okay, and let's see. So when do you plan to take the IELTS test?
Im đi, đừng có nói nữa được không? Đang livestream nghe bài giảng luôn á.
So in the next couple of weeks, some of you are taking it next month. So in 3 months, generally very close to the exam. Okay, great. We're going to get you on track to do well. And what do you think is the most difficult skill of the exam? Speaking or writing, reading or listening? Okay, so I see many of you struggling with the speaking test. Okay, so that must be why you're here tonight. Great. Well, the speaking test is made up of 3 parts, as you guys would know if you've started studying for the test. And tonight we're going to look at part 2 of the speaking test. Okay, and part 2, in other words, is known as the long term. And in this part of the exam, you're going to speak for a lengthy period of time, or up to 2 minutes. And today's webinar, we will look at the following things. So by the end of the lesson, you should be able to use 2 strategies to plan your short talk. I'll also get you to think about how to clearly introduce your topic. So there's a range of phrases that can be used to help you streamline or make your answers more efficient. Here we'll also use some useful language to link ideas together. This is important for the coherence and cohesion or fluency of the speaking test. And today's topic, we'll be looking at describing a place that you have visited. Okay, so here it is. Here's the card. And on the test, when we're in the exam room, the examiner will pass us an index card with a question on it. And then we'll say, you've got 1 minute. You can prepare some notes for this question. And after you've had that time to prepare, then you need to then speak at length about this topic. Yes, I know it can be quite a daunting task. I've found so myself when practicing. But you do have a little bit of time to prepare. As I mentioned, this is called the long term. Why is it called the long term? Well, it's different to part 1 and part 3, where you'll have a conversation with the examiner, and they will ask you about your background in part 1, and they'll also ask you about your opinions and what you see, your observations of the world in part 3. So let's take a look at this question. It says, describe a beautiful place you once visited. You should say when you went to this place, where it was, who you went with, and explain why you like it so much. So first thing I tell students when I see this index card is to pay attention up the top to that bold sentence, the first one. This is very important. You need to talk about this sentence. So in here we need to find a location, and it should be a location that we ourselves have visited in the past. And we can actually change this question a little bit, but I would suggest sticking to the topic and trying as best as you can to think of this question. Okay, so this part in the middle, you can change it. You don't need to include this information, but this one at the top, yes, you definitely do. So when describing a beautiful place, that doesn't mean that you need to have traveled to many different places. You know, it doesn't mean you need to talk about a holiday or something like that. You can talk about a place that's in your city. Yep. All right, and this sentence down the bottom, explain why you liked it so much. This is really useful. I find this one useful because when we explain things in our own words, it helps us to speak for a longer period of time. And notice the question says describe. So the examiner is looking for you to use adjectives in your answer. Can you use descriptive vocabulary? All right, so let me just I'm going to ask you to answer the following questions, true or false. So you guys can just tap your answer in the chat box here. So the topic is related to a personal experience. Okay, yes, I see you guys are getting it. So keyword there, the pronoun you. All right, so next one, you have 2 minutes to prepare. How many minutes do we get in order to prepare our answer? Yes, that's correct, Mohammed, 1 minute. Okay, so we also need to speak for a total of 2 minutes. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. You cannot make notes. Can I make notes on this index card? Right, that's true. Now, some people might think it's a bit of a waste of time. It depends. It's up to you. I mean, it depends on your thought process. I personally find it helpful to write down 5 or 6 things, just the idea. So I'll try to write down maybe 2 or 3 words maximum, not a whole sentence. You don't have time to write full sentences, so just making notes would be enough. You must cover all the points on the question card. Do you guys think about this one? So see some of you getting it, but this is probably the misunderstood part. So no, you don't have to do it. Different people will tell you different things, but I often don't answer any of those points. And the reason is I don't want the examiner telling me what to say. I should try to come up with the structure of my talk by myself. And these words here, when, where, who, notice how they're the 5 W's. And the 5 W's, you could just learn them at home and apply them to the question as you see fit. Some questions, they won't be relevant. All right, so the next one here is, you need to finish your story before the time is over. What do you guys think here? So when you're practicing at home, try to get in the habit of keeping your talk succinct to a certain amount of time. Aim for about 1 minute and 30 plus, towards 2 minutes. You won't get it exactly, but yeah, like you will understand how long that time is when you're in exam if you practice at home. And beyond that, if you keep your answer clear within the 2 minutes, that's going to help you to sound more fluent. If you can come to your point very clearly, very quickly, that's going to help you get points on the fluency. Okay, so you need to tell a funny story to get a high score. Obviously not. So how about an entertaining or interesting story? What do you guys think? Should it be interesting? Yeah, I mean, it's not a stand-up comedy session. You're not trying to sell movie tickets. This is just this is a language test. You're trying to find ways to express yourself. So just getting the key points down. It doesn't need to be a story, and it doesn't need to be an entertaining one at that. So the next one here, the examiner will ask you a follow-up question after your talk. What do you think about that one? Yeah, yes, usually they will. It depends on how well you've answered the question, I guess. If you cover the full 2 minutes, probably they will just move on to part 3. However, if you fall short, this is another chance for you to share more information about the topic. They will ask you a related question to this point. So describe a beautiful place you once visited. They might say, how often do you travel? Or do you often go abroad to travel? Do you like to spend time visiting places outside of your hometown? Something like related to the question. And you should give a long, detailed answer for this question. What do you guys think of that one? So actually, you could answer this in 1, maybe 2 sentences at most. But yeah, you don't need to talk for 2 minutes once again. Simple and short. That's right, Lee. Okay, and the questions in part 3, are they related to the part 2 topic? Yes, they are. Yeah. So we're going to continue. Part 1 will be slightly different. And before you start planning, spend around 30 seconds choosing the specific topic you want to talk about. Obviously not. We only have 1 minute, so spend your time wisely. It doesn't have to be the best, most exciting answer to the question. Just make sure that you've got an example and then spend that minute developing it, thinking about what kind of adjectives you're going to use. That's a really important point for this question. So at home, instead of, thinking of what kind of cool vocabulary you can use, think about some synonyms for these quite common words like beautiful. What's another way we could say beautiful, guys? Right, there you go. Wonderful, charming, gorgeous. You've got plenty of ideas. So use them in your answers. Interesting, perhaps we could go for intriguing. Exciting, we could go for exhilarating. So you want to get in the habit of mixing up those words. Just like on the writing test, paraphrasing adjectives is really important for this question. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples now. So what words or expressions could you use to describe the places on the board? So the first one up here, we've got a mountainous background. What words or phrases could you use here? Have a 30-second think about that. Breathtaking is a really good one. Spectacular, picturesque. Excellent. Yeah. So the use of all those adjectives definitely going to be to your favor. Okay. What about this second picture here? Slightly different. Now we're in a town.
Traditional, crowded.
Historical is a good one. Crowded, quiet, I guess. Interesting. Okay. What about the third picture down the bottom? Here we have a city, a major city, we could say. Modern works here. Magnificent. It's kind of general, but you could use these words. Cosmopolitan, that's a really nice one. Picturesque is kind of more for environments. Futuristic, yeah. Concrete jungle, that's another good one. Okay, what about this last one? This is an actual jungle. How would you describe going to the beautiful jungle? Silent, peaceful, green, tranquil, natural, dreamy. That's an interesting one. Vivid. Could work. Therapeutic. A lot of people are going to the forest nowadays for finding some therapy. Yes. Purposes, thinking about the different reasons you would go. Excellent. Okay, guys. All right, so planning our talks. If you have some word, pop them down on the paper. As I said, I usually go 5. 5's the magic number. If you can hit that, should be able to talk for 2 minutes. And this just helps you when you're speaking to develop your ideas as and when you go along, and obviously increases your fluency. So before today's lesson, and you're accompanied by this index card, and you've got to practice for this stuff. How did you plan your short talk? What strategy do you use? Keywords, great. Brainstorming. Present and future. Present and future is a good one. Comparing, and it helps you to analyze more. Yeah, looking at the keywords, you might, because you have the writing in front of you, you could think of some paraphrases, some synonyms to the question. And Mary says past, present, future. Yeah, it's good to get in that habit. Why? Well, this question asks us to think about a place we visited. So this is in the past. However, could use multiple tenses in your answer. Not too many. I suggest probably sticking to 2. And talking about when you went there in the past, and then perhaps what you thought after you visited there that could bring into place a nice present perfect or future tense, and just think about whether you would recommend it to others. WH questions as well. Okay, that sounds pretty similar. Okay, so don't just describe the place using adjectives, although we said this is important. Try to tell the examiner about yourself at the time that you went to this place. So you're talking about visiting a beautiful place. How did you feel at the time? Were you stressed? Were you feeling happy? What were you doing at that time? And what extra information could you give about these photos in particular? Let's have a look. So we've got mountains. We've got here some canoes. So it looks like a water activity, water sport activity, an adventure of some sort. And then, well, there's an approach by a creature. So let's focus on perhaps picture two. Picture two, guys. So imagine that you're going on a trip to a lake in the hills, and let's see, of course we could describe this as a tranquil place, a majestic place, a calming place. However, in addition to that, what would you talk about in this scene? Nasimon says it happened on summer, so relating to when it happened in the year. That's a good one. How the weather was at the time. Yes, that could set you up for a nice story. Kyo says travel season. So perhaps, yeah, when you get your holidays from school or work and you get a chance to travel. Oh, talking about the flowers in the nearby area, that could be another point. So describing the local environments. Okay, guys, so you get the idea. So here we have what's called a mind map. So this is also a really good habit to get into. Perhaps you don't really have that much space on the index card, so maybe just writing bullet points, but thinking about these kind of points mentioned here. So let's have a look. What you could do is brainstorm 3 to 6 of these points and have a think about these typical prompts. They're often going to be very similar throughout different questions. So here we have some of the 5 W's. We have where, we have when, we also have who, why, and what. So yeah, those are very frequent ones that you could use to describe a beautiful place. Excuse me, guys. Yeah, how you got there is a really good one as well. The weather at the time, perhaps the food, and a recommendation. So once you've finished your talk, toward the end, it's a really good idea to give a recommendation. So do you think people should go back to the place that you visited? It's a nice way to sum up how you were feeling or reflecting on the trip. Okay, guys, so just have a look through those numbers and see if you can match them to the letters on the left-hand side here. So just take a minute and read through them, and then we'll go through the answers one by one. So don't write anything just yet, just reading. All right, guys, let's go through number one. So where? What do you guys think one matches with? That's correct. Yes, the southeast coast of Alaska. Okay. What about number two? When? When do you think this occurred? In the summer of 2016? Yep, that's correct. How about who? With two close friends. Yes, that's also correct. And how about why? What would you guys put for why? So the reason, the love of nature and the outdoors. How about the next one? What? What would you say for question number 5? So what you did, went kayaking, wildlife watching, that's brilliant. The weather, how did they describe the weather? Surprisingly warm and sunny, but cold at night. Okay, a little bit of variation there. And the food is local cuisine. Lots of seafood. They give an example there. And that obviously leaves us with E for recommendation. So this person said, yes, it's a perfect destination for nature lovers. Okay, brilliant. So, yeah, you might, as I said, you might choose 3 to 5 of those and write down some notes. Okay, so let's take a look at this one now. So here's a different question. A restaurant I visited recently. So question might be, describe a restaurant that you visited recently. Okay, guys. So what headings would you use in this topic? Well, you could, for example, use the ones similar to what we just looked at, but also mention what food, the atmosphere, whether it was good or bad, your opinion about the matter. There you go. So atmosphere. How could we describe the atmosphere, guys? Excellent. I'm seeing lots of good ideas. Cozy, warm, relaxing, romantic. Yeah, I've got here vibrant, energetic, quiet, and romantic. So yeah, some similar ideas as you guys. Let's see. So just have a think now. Just spend the next 1 or 2 minutes. Choose 3 of these topics here. I would suggest choosing. Actually, no. I would suggest choosing 5 of these topics. So could you write down 2 or 3 words maximum for each of the 5 categories? How would you approach this? How would you plan this question? And then when you're finished, you can write it in the chat box. All right, guys. In the meantime, if anybody has any questions, we will take 5 minutes at the end of the webinar. So if you have any burning questions about the IELTS, specifically speaking, go ahead and put them in the Q&A box up the top of the Zoom toolbar, and I'll try to get to them at the end of the webinar. So I see a lot of you guys talking about what restaurant you went to. Can you think about a couple more points? So, for example, why and the atmosphere. There we go. Parham says, in the heart of London, last October, meeting up with new friends. Definitely a good set of notes to talk about. Elisa says, Italian restaurant last week in Milan. My husband and I, Italian cuisine, cozy, romantic atmosphere. So that looks like 6 points. Yes, good amount of information there as well. Senia, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Near my house at the city centre a few days ago, I visited with my pal. I was searching for calm atmosphere for visiting my friends. So past continuous, past simple in there. So a bit of a variation on the tenses. Excellent stuff, guys. Okay, let's move on. So, well, we could be quite descriptive with our answer and choose 5 points. That's the way that I answer the question. However, I have heard that many other IELTS experts, they recommend telling a story. Yes, so telling a story could help us to personalize our answer and create a strategy that kind of a structure that works for us. So it doesn't need to be absolutely exciting. As I said, you could talk about missing a bus. Perhaps, these guys are on holiday and they need to get back to the airport and they missed their bus. On the other hand, you could talk about losing your phone as well. Could be a story that you would mention. Not necessarily about describing a beautiful place, but now thinking about just the questions in general. And, if we're talking about missing a bus and losing your phone, let's take a look at this. So losing your phone, you could start off your talk by talking about the time that you lost your phone, when it was, and how you were feeling at the time. Okay, so maybe you talk about studying your degree and you had a lot of tasks to do, you were feeling overwhelmed. Don't only talk about the story, but talk about what you were doing at the time and then compare it to the future. So after I found my phone, I felt this certain way. So perhaps before we might say overwhelmed, but after you are relieved, you are over the moon. You felt a sense of calm. So see how this can help you to sort of use more rich vocabulary in your answer, comparing, reflecting on different experiences. So how would you feel if you missed a bus? Focus on your adjectives here, the use of adjectives. Panicky, disappointed, furious. Wow, that sounds like an important bus ride. Scared, sad, tense, anxious, afraid, awful. Yes, you're taking me back to a time when I missed the bus and I felt an adrenaline rush, when you feel really like a sense of panic, you need to get somewhere and you're going to be in trouble with your parents and all sorts of things. So yeah, you can get quite emotional if you feel this kind of scenario. Okay, so what about when you actually arrived at your destination? So it's all going to be over, you're going to get to that place. How did you feel when you arrived? So relieved, some say overwhelmed, safe, happy, calm, delighted, lucky, victorious, that's a good one, joyful, grateful, get to breathe easier. Exhilarated. Okay, so or secure is another good one. So you can see it's the opposite. So it's bringing in positive and negative adjectives into your answer by using this kind of technique. Okay, so I think one of you mentioned this earlier, the structure that you would use is the different tenses in your answer. So here we can take an introduction, a past, description, opinion, and future. Bang, we can just put our notes into this formula. We already created it before the exam. And we can even start to learn some phrases to go along with that. We'll take a look at that in a moment. So in the introduction, think about what you're going to speak about. So what's your idea? How to phrase that exactly? A good thing to include here is to explain the reasons why you're talking about this particular idea. If we move on to the past, again, think back to that time where you visited the beautiful place. Where were you living at the time? What were you doing there? So were you studying? Were you working? Were you just taking a gap year? Or at least as my first ever vacation. Then you can move on. This is the heart of the talk, the description. Describe a beautiful place. What happens? What is beautiful about it? Spend 30 seconds on this part, but that's the core of your answer to this topic, basically. Then we can move on. We can always start to talk about our opinions. Was it a good, bad experience? Would you recommend to others? Subraja, after some consideration, that's a really good phrase to use here as well. So after some consideration, I don't think I would recommend this particular place to others who don't like to, go in the elevated mountains, for example. Would you do it again, future, or why not? I highly recommend it. Yes, good. All right, let's take a look at an example now. What are you going to speak about in the introduction and why? Well, I've got my idea here. A beautiful place I visited is Alaska. Alaska is a beautiful place. Unfortunately, this is too short. It's not going to help you very much. So think more about the reason why you included this example. Here's a useful phrase to use in your answer. Often the first thing you say, today I'd like to talk about a place I went on holiday. Paraphrase the question, always useful. You can say, was exceptionally beautiful. So what word would you guys put in the middle here? That's right. Yes, Sabi. So which relative pronoun helps to make your sentences longer? In the exam, they'll be looking at grammatical range. So that just means using complex sentences, which aren't very complex, but they're just longer. So yeah, you can see how that but, which, while, you get the point. So this place is called the Kenai Falls. Not sure if I'm saying that correctly. Something is located in the southern part of Alaska. Okay, we've got the same structure here. So more detailed information this time. The place is called. And then give a reason. So I chose to talk about this place.
Anh nhắn tin đi, đừng có nói nữa.
Because what kind of reason? Well, depends. Has anybody been to Kenai Falls before? I imagine.
Khi nào anh nhắn tin đi em quay lên.
We won't stick on this.
Em đã nói là đừng có nói nữa mà.
You could just say, because the time I spent there was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Yeah. Okay. So it's in a nutshell. This first part of the answer, this can be very general. You're just introducing yourself. The details will come later. So there it is. You guys can think about this topic now. A restaurant I've recently visited. So I have to think about these points. Today I'd like to talk about something which I chose to talk about this. So can you just number them 1, 2, and 3 in the chat box? Which points would you include here when talking about a restaurant in your introduction? For number 1, perhaps you're going to talk about the name. So guys, have a think about what you would actually write. Which nouns, which words would you put in 1, 2, and 3? Excuse me. So number 1 is a restaurant. Make sure to include the name. So Senia says Italian restaurant, place. This place is called Mona. I chose to talk about this restaurant. Senia, what's your reason? Why did you talk about this restaurant? Remember to include that. Usman says, talk about the place, the location. It sounds like the same restaurant. Okay, so great. You guys see it? That's the structure. Try and use that in your introduction. Okay, so then we move on to the past. We're talking about where you were living, what you were doing at the time. Go ahead, use some signpost expressions in your answer. But first, let me give you a bit more. What would you guys write for this blank? Information, detail, context. Context is a good one. Okay, so then here's a nice phrase. At the time, I was working as a teacher in Rome. Okay, so you can introduce some past continuous there. How would you finish this sentence? That's right, Suri. So I've been working there 4 or 5 years. And 2 of my close friends, Pete and Chris, had left the school. Had just left the school, had already left the school, had just left the school, where we blank working. What would you put for the final space? We were working. Excellent. Okay, so here we got another piece of information. So we decided to go on a holiday together to celebrate. So this part just gives us some more background. Who are you? What were you doing at the time? But it also just gives you a chance to use a different tense. And then you need to switch on to back to past simple tense here. Okay, so anyway, let's talk about the main events. When we got there, we could see what all the fuss is about. Do you guys know this phrase? What all the fuss is about? Basically means what everybody is talking about, what everybody is excited about. And then, we kayaking to a glacier, went, yes, camping by the shore, and what verb would you use at this part? Saw so many different types of animals. Great. Use some examples of animals. And then, just before we left, what happened? Guys, what happened next? Can you predict it? we were attacked by a bear. Ooh, fascinating. A bear approached us. One of our friends got injured. Okay, many different ideas there we could talk about. Bear came into our camp, and what word would you guys put here? To chase him away by throwing stones. Tried, yes. Remember, or had, past simple there. Okay, moving on to opinions now. Was it a good or bad experience? Would you recommend it to others? So you guys all know the phrase, in my opinion. If you like the outdoors, Alaska is the perfect holiday. How would you finish this blank? Destination. Probably the best option. Escape, getaway is a good one. Wonderful. So it has something nature, lots of different to do, and to encounter animals in the wild. Lots of beautiful nature, lots of breathtaking nature. Yes, try to vary those adjectives. That'll help you a lot. Tranquil, nice. Okay, unspoiled is a good one. So basically where there are less or no human beings living, so then it hasn't been spoiled. Lots of different activities to do, and a chance to encounter animals in the wild. Okay, so that's the advice if you want to go to that area of Alaska. Why would you do it again? Why or why not? What phrases could you use to conclude your talk, guys? Remember, this is the last part of your talk. Overall. Finally, in general. Okay, yeah. Good. So with regards to the future, I'd like to go back there. I'd love to go back there. What about this next part? I feel like I only a small part of what the country has to offer. Experienced, yes, good. As I feel like I only experienced. All right, guys, so there it is. There's one approach you can take. That's the storytelling approach. Introduction, past, description, opinion, future. Maybe you just choose 3 or 4 of those and come up with your structure before you go in the exam. It'll definitely help you if you have a plan beforehand. Of course, you won't know the question, but if you have some phrases such as today I'd like to talk about, it'll just make you feel a lot less nervous knowing, you have something behind you. And the other approach, just writing down 5 to 6 key points, just a couple of words. I've personally found that no matter what you choose to say, if you have the 5 or 6 points, it does usually help you to talk for 2 minutes. Okay, so, when you get time to practice, use the outline, plan a short talk, record yourself, listen and check it. Maybe share it with a friend or family member. You could go on some online websites where you can share recordings with native speakers, and perhaps, somebody learning another language, for example, Vietnamese, they may check your English and you can check their Vietnamese. There's plenty of websites that you can do that. And that concludes the webinar for today for speaking part 2. And we'll go over some questions in a moment, but let me just take a couple of seconds, draw your attention to the speaking test, which is a service that we provide here on Ielts Online Tests. And this is just an opportunity for you to get a real sense of the test before you go into the exam. And let's talk about how it works. So what you do is you contact IELTS Online Test. You can schedule a speaking test, book the test that works for you, any suitable time in your calendar. There are many options for you. Take your test online. So there's actually the full 30-minute one-to-one speaking test session with a qualified IELTS exam. Now, the test only takes 15 minutes, so you're probably going to get some feedback after that, one-on-one. And after you've finished, you can receive your score, which is really good because you both get your score, you get verbal feedback and a written report with some comments. They also suggest your band score and some areas to improve on. Here's how it looks. You've got your scores on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, you have the 4 examination criteria. Fluency and coherence is one of them, and they'll give you some more detailed advice on each of the criteria. And personally, I think it's a really good idea, no matter how you do it, to get a practice test before you actually go in the exam, just to kill the nerves, see how it really feels. As I said, you could get a family or friend to test you, sit you down, guide you through the 15-minute test, see how you feel. What areas do you think you need to improve on? Perhaps they have some advice for you as well. But the number one way is obviously set up those speaking tests with qualified teachers and ex-examiners of the IELTS, because they'll be able to give you the most specific advice possible and help you to save money retaking that IELTS test, because it is an expensive test and you don't want to have to keep resitting the thing. Okay, so there we go. There's some more information. Alrighty, guys, let me take some questions before we head off related to the speaking test in general. So I've got one question here, how to manage unfamiliar questions. It's a really tricky one because sometimes they give you these really specific questions, like describe a time that you saw plastic waste in your surroundings. I mean, who ever thought about that specific event? I mean, I know that I cannot describe a specific time or when I saw that. In some cases, you should generalize. Think about the times that you have seen waste in public, and maybe talk about 1 or 2 different times, and focus on your opinion and your feelings about that topic in general. Yeah, I don't really feel comfortable that a lot of people think it's okay to throw waste on the streets. There are many solutions to this problem, such as organizing community cleanups. Talk about some of the solutions. So there's a wide variety. If you get stuck, you can slightly change the question. Just make sure you're talking about the same topic. At the end of the day, this is a language exam. They want you to use as much language. How can we stop the recording of the IELTS listening test? So unfortunately, guys, when you're taking the IELTS listening test, it's just once through. So you will get 10 minutes at the end to transfer your answers. However, the recordings won't stop for a prolonged period of time. All right, let's take a look at a couple of more questions. How to stay fluent when you are feeling nervous while speaking, Zenora says. Well, that's a very good question. I suggest that you prepare 3 to 5 phrases at the absolute minimum and come into the test already prepared with those phrases. That can help you as a kind of a scaffold, so that when you get in a difficult situation, you have something to fall back on. and that can help you stay fluent. Pausing in your answer. I know it sounds counterintuitive to stop speaking in a 2-minute talk. However, notice how I just did it then. You can pause for up to 5 seconds, reset your mind, think about the next point you want to say. That doesn't affect your fluency. Try to take your talk to the end, to the 2 minutes. When you're really stuck, you feel like you have no more to say, conclude your answer. Overall, in my opinion, I recommend people go to this place because. Bam asks, when will the Ielts test in Vietnam come back? I'm not really sure about that. I did hear some articles in the news suggesting that the tests have been stopped indefinitely. I really do hope that they come back soon. Otherwise, I'll be out of a job. So fun. I'm sure there are many people hoping the same thing and they will return soon. At the end of the day, you guys want to study and work abroad, so there will be that demand there. So let's take a look at another question. Can I have the recording to this webinar? Yes, guys, go to the Ielts Online Test website at the end. You should be able to re-watch the webinar the next day. Can I speak for 1 minute and 30 seconds if we cover everything about the question Dikshak mentions? Well, yes, it's not a strict timing. If you talk for 90 seconds and you nail it, you nail this topic, you've included all this wonderful vocabulary, different grammar tenses, you mention your opinions, it's well structured. I really don't see any problem with a shorter answer. I don't see that affecting your score. The point where it starts to affect your score is if you kind of at that 1 minute mark. Then it's kind of like maybe you need to practice speaking more slowly. That could help you to fill the time. Or it's just that you're not talking about enough main details in the body of your talk. Let's have a look here. Any more questions? All right, guys. I think we will stop there for today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you join tonight. Hopefully that was helpful for you guys. If you do have any other questions, just contact the staff at Ielts Online Test and they'll be very happy to help you out with any of your questions. Okay, and goodbye for now. Take care. Good luck on your exams, everyone.